I don't even know myself. Like, what makes you think you get to know me?
I think for triple attachment, a lot of things can feel like intuition that aren't.
Mm-mm, mm.
That's just you kind of getting caught up in your swirling Bermuda bullshit.
I am attached to disconnecting from myself, and so therefore, like I'm going to project that out into other people as well. I'm like, you have to disconnect
Ooh,
from
yeah,
me
there it
also.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, Xander's telling them all of our secrets over here.
The big hormone enneagram.
Let me lay it on the line. I got a little freakiness inside. Let you know that the man has got to deal with it.
Hi, I'm John Lukovich, sexual self-pres, 4 with 5 wing, 458 trifix.
Hi, I'm David Gray, self-pres sexual 9 with 1, 974 trifix.
What up? It's Emeka. I'm an 8-wing-7, sexual self-pres with 854 fixes.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I am a self-pres social 3, wing 4, with a 369 trifix. If you like our podcast, guys, make sure you go like and subscribe on the Apple Podcast app. And if you really like us, you should definitely leave us a review.
Welcome back to the Big Hormone Enneagram, the show for intelligent chads and horny nerds,
Lost people.
people, degenerates. So we've been talking about John's new instincts book for the last 4 weeks, last 4 episodes, getting into how to integrate the blind spot. And so there's been a lot of content. People have been, making comments about how this stuff has been impacting them. But we want you guys to call in to the love line. We haven't done a love line in a while, and we want to do a love line around people's feedback around John's book. So the number is 323-696-0647. Call the love line before Monday, October 11th, because that's the day that we're going to be recording with any of your comments, questions. You can even call in just to make weird noises and horny sounds that
Yeah.
you've been inspired by. Just call into the love line. And if you do,
Primal
our
screams.
favorite comment, question that we received that's on the show, we're putting out a prize. John's got some outtakes or things that haven't been released or weren't part of the book that he will be sending to whoever is the winner. So whoever calls in with our favorite comment, most entertaining, interesting comment, question, will receive a prize from John. John, you
Yeah,
want to say something about that?
Yeah, you got to be a super nerd because basically I ended up writing 40. I mean, there's a ton of shit I didn't put in the book, but I wrote 40 pages on like the biological and anthropological basis of instinct as I understand it from my research. And so it's a lot, and I think it's actually really useful, but it's very specific. And so the winner will get that, hopefully, because the winner has read the book carefully and is into this shit. Alexandra and I are going to be going live on Instagram Live and Facebook Live through the Enneagrammer group. We're going to be on Big Hormone, Instagram.com/Big Hormone account, and Instagram.com/Angry Enneagram 9, Alexandra's account. And we're going to be talking instincts in my book. We did one already, and it was a lot of fun. So we're doing that Thursday, October 7th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Hope you can make it.
So today we have a special guest with us, Czander, who some of you guys already know is a participant of our Facebook group, Enneagrammer Universe. And he's joining us today because a couple of weeks ago, he posted an excellent, illuminating comment about attachment. And you guys know that we've been discussing attachment for the last, God, how knows long, like 6 months, just trying to understand the mystery of attachment. And, Courtney's been on here to help us articulate, and she's really contributed a lot to our understanding of attachment, but it still felt like something was missing. And Czander posted a comment in the group that blew up because it's excellent and it really connected some dots. I think I can speak for everyone here that it's a big connection to be made that was made with that comment. So I wanted to give him a chance to come on here and blast and share with the world his insight, and we can discuss and see what else comes up. So, Xander, can you tell the people about yourself? And
Yeah. Just want to say though that at the end of this call, like I don't think we'll understand any more about attachment types because we we are committed to not being understood by by others and by ourselves too.
That is true.
So I am social self-pres 9wing1 953 trifix. One of my friends introduced me to the podcast like early last year, like early summer last year, and I was listening to it and I really vibed with it because I had been learning about the Enneagram for like a number of years before. And this just seemed to breathe new life into the practice of it. I feel like the things that I was finding was either like transcendental studies of like it's that like boomer Enneagram Institute kind of feeling of like conferences and all these kinds of things like that you have to pay for to like get some sort of certification in some program and you attend workshops with old people. Like there's that side of things that I found, and like I didn't really vibe with that. I'm like I could learn things from there, right? But I didn't really get far. And then the other side of a lot of Enneagram stuff is like this like really cutesy personality thing, which I think is fine. I mean, it's fine, but like
it sucks.
it's not fun.
And so like when I was introduced to the podcast, yeah, it really breathed new life into it because there's a lot of substance to what you guys are doing. But then also like you all, and I mean, I'm social dominant, but like you all's place in the context of in the Enneagram world, I guess, even though it's really niche, is like disrupting it in a way that I think like needs to happen to move it forward. So
Thank you.
so then I like reactivated my Facebook account.
Whoa.
Just for us.
Yeah, no, seriously, that to like join the group to just like see what it was about. And yeah, and so I've just been participating here and there, and
You just been fucking loving it.
I guess.
I should say that I mean, I'm always looking out for people who have serious curiosity about this stuff because that's super rare. And Xander, you're one of those people who always seems to have, like really serious insight. The only kind of insight that you can have if you've really given something some thought. And so I really respect that.
Yeah, and I'd call it vision too. There's been a couple of your posts, Xander, that I've grabbed because they were things that augment some of my ideas, and I'll be using them in my book.
Wow,
With that credit.
thanks.
Yeah.
Without referencing your sources.
I might give you credit. I mean, it was my idea that you were building on. We'll do a negotiation, maybe. Percentage, maybe you get 7% or something. On
Oh,
the
wow. I was
paragraph.
going to say like 2, but
Well, I
Pretty
mean,
generous.
I'm gonna, each paragraph is gonna have a dollar amount because I'm self-pres. 7% of one paragraph.
So yeah, anyway,
read the.
go ahead and read your comment and tell us, I guess, how it came about to be that, how you realized that.
Yeah, I can read the comment and then tell you all, maybe share some of my process of how I came to it. So the comment was in response to a post. I don't really remember totally what the post was about, but it was about attachment. And I think this person was questioning whether they related to it or not, or they related to some of it, but not all of it, kind of thing. So I wrote, I think there is some vagueness with the term attachment in object relations, which leads to confusion about how it plays out. Because technically, frustration types are attached to frustration and rejection types are attached to rejection. What attached means in this latter sense is that there is an ego investment in replaying relational circumstances such that one, say, gets frustrated because the ego is built on a foundation of frustration. For example, if I am not frustrated, something is wrong because from childhood, the habituated survival state is one of frustration. Same goes for rejection. When we get to attachment, however, it translates to attachment types are attached to attachment. This is true in a surface sense, but quite confusing. The question to specify this dynamic then is what relational circumstances are replayed such that the ego maintains itself? More specifically, what relational circumstances must I replay so that I can attach to an object over and over and over again? From the podcast episodes, Courtney's example for these triangle types is that the child did not feel seen or supported. So they asked themselves, yesterday I felt seen and supported, but today I don't. What can I do to feel seen or supported? Thus comes adaptation. As an object relations pattern, however, what relational circumstances must be played out for the ego to adapt over and over again? The dynamic of not being seen or supported, i.e., being disconnected from the object. In other words, triangle types actually play out the circumstance of feeling disconnected so that they can adapt and maintain an ego that is invested in adaptation. Simply speaking, I will continue to make it such that I am not seen or supported so that I can adapt and then feel seen and supported. Furthermore, seeking and feeling this disconnect makes me feel individuated, which is actually false individuation and another way the ego maintains itself because I'm just replaying an object relation or a past trauma. In this sense, just as 147 are attached to frustration and 258 to rejection, 369 could be said to be attached to disconnect. I make sure I'm eventually unseen or unsupported so that I can feel like an individual and then adapt. We see examples of this where triangle types are often the most heavily invested in saying things like, I relate to this, I don't relate to that, or you don't know who I am, you don't see me, or I'm so misunderstood, I'm too nuanced to be put in a box. While these things might be true, there's often a lot of emotional attachment because the ego is invested in replaying this habituated survival state. If someone actually saw or supported me and I don't have to adapt, then what am I?
Damn. That shit hits hard.
God, I wish we had like air horn sound effects and all this kind of shit. Yeah, please.
I can add some. I will add some.
God, I think I want to read this part again out loud just to emphasize it. You said, what relational circumstances are replayed such that the ego maintains itself? More specifically, what relational circumstances must I replay so that I can attach to an object over and over and over again? That's fucking amazing. So, yeah, I have some questions, but I want to hear like your thought process first.
Yeah, I think my thought process started because I was just really confused with what attachment was in general. Like it felt like like a filler word. Like it didn't really have that much meaning to me.
Mm.
Like
Mhm.
it's like a filler word for like some general thing that was happening. Because like frustration is like so specific. Like I feel like I can locate what frustration feels like in my body. Like, oh, when I'm frustrated, like I can feel that. And then with rejection, like I know what that feels like, and I know maybe what it feels like to like preemptively reject someone who sees a part of myself that I've rejected. Like I can feel that in myself. I mean, I'm not either of those. I'm not like identified or fixated with either of those, but I can locate that in my body. But like with attachment, I was like, no, like what does that even feel like to me? And I mean, I think
Mhm.
it's primarily or like partially because attachment types generally have this sense of unlocatability, right, to the rest of the world. Um, and also because like I am an attachment type, and so like I'm trying to locate this feeling in myself that is built around being unlocatable. So it's like I'm going around in circles.
Yeah, wow.
So I really try to just sit with myself and like really try to get okay, what am I feeling when I'm feeling like quote unquote attachment? Like what does that feel like? And then also, I did some work to tie it back to like the foundations of type structure in terms of the centers of intelligence. And so, yeah, there's kind of, I guess, two parts to how I came to this idea of disconnect. I mean, first, disconnect, as in just like my pattern in relationships, has always been like this push pull kind of pattern. And I mean, I primarily look at it in relationships first because I think that's where like my fixation really plays out a lot.
Mm.
Like I make my way into relationships, like personal relationships or like in wider settings, and I connect with people and it's great. But there's always this point where I feel like I'm too known or something, and I just like rebel against it. I like
Mm.
I this person maybe sees me too much or like they know me too well, and I feel like I have to do something like throw them off, like to say like, oh, you think you know me, but you really don't know me. Like I'm gonna change it up on you and show you like a side of myself that you haven't seen before. And like I have like an infinite number of sides, so like no one will ever know me, and I get to control that.
Mm.
Mm.
That's good right there.
Yeah.
And when I was like trying to sit with this feeling, it's like it's less that I wish someone would know me. Like I don't think that's it, because I think deep down I don't want anyone to know me, because my whole ego is built around like not being known,
Yeah.
especially to myself.
Yeah.
So I always have to feel like I have to like change it up and like differentiate or like disconnect from what people know of me. And it's always, you know, in relation to like what people know of me, what people see me, how people perceive me. Um, I always want to like disconnect and like push myself away from that, and then come back around.
Can
And
you hi by the way. Can you put your finger on what it feels like will happen if you get known fully?
Yeah, well, I mean, even earlier when you all were like, "Oh, this is like the most amazing thing that you've written," or like, "This is, you know, this is such a big piece." Like, I felt like I was dying.
Why?
Why?
I don't know. I don't know. Like, I mean, partially it's because you all are seeing me in a way, right? You all are seeing me
Mhm.
and putting me out there
Hmm.
into the world.
So we're making you known.
Yeah, yeah, you're making me known, and that is terrifying to me, I think.
Is it that we're making you known in a specific, like a facet of you is being made known, and that's not really necessarily the full picture? So that's terrifying. Is that why?
No, I think no, I think it's just being put out there.
Okay.
Well, yeah, does it to me I feel like as an attachment type I think it would feel something like now I have to only be that person in front of this group.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Is that at all correct for you?
I mean, maybe, but that's not what's coming up for me.
Okay.
It's just feeling exposed, I guess. It's
Mm,
like I've been like hiding this whole time, or like I've been just
I
keeping
get
to
what you're saying.
myself. You know, I've just been living my life, and now, like I'm bigger. I feel bigger than I want to be, or something.
Hmm.
And what's your
Yeah,
core type again?
9.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking that it's this attachment to disconnect is going to show up differently for 9, 6, and 3, and I'm interested to hear about the different ways that that's showing up. But you know, it's the sort of thing where nines don't want to be defined, and it's showing up in how nines respond to being typed, for example. Like it's
Mhm.
more like rebelling against the categories itself. Like to
Mhm.
be categorized is like shouldn't be happening. Like why is it that there are 9 types that have distinct type structures and different rules? Like you see a lot of these nines saying, well, I can identify with this type because that's, you know, that's what I think I am. And if you sort of provide any sort of limitation on what that type might be, they're like, well, I identify with this. You know, why are you constraining what I can be?
Or they
Yeah,
might morph into that definition.
there you go.
Right.
Yeah.
Adapt to it.
Yeah.
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 And I lose control of my own definition there.
Mhm.
Like I don't even know myself. Like what makes you think you get to know me?
I
That's a
get
good quote right
that.
there. That's a good quote right there for
Yeah.
attachment.
That's rude as fuck for you to assume that you know me when I don't even know me.
It's also like, what did you say just a minute ago, Xander? You're making me bigger than I am, or something like that.
Yeah, you're making me bigger than I want to be.
Okay, well, but the thing is, there's the opposite, the exact opposite. Also, I'm bigger than you think I am.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I mean that's part of 9. That's part of that philosopher of the universe. I'm sitting on top of the universe. I'm bigger. I'm dissipated as wide as infinity, and you're never going to see all of me. That's a piece of it, also.
Well, so my first question is that you said I'm like if I start to feel seen and basically and supported, I somehow make myself. I'm I gotta look at the fucking words. Hang on. I continuously make it such that I'm not seen, supported, so that I can adapt and then feel seen and supported. And it seems like what we're talking about right now is that the way that nine, in particular, like shifts the lens. Like,
Yeah.
like which are you going to see the specific me or the universal me? And like,
Mhm.
oh, if you're seeing the specific me, now I'm going to go universal, and if you're seeing the universal me, I'm going to go specific. But I'm
Mhm.
curious, Xander, what you had in mind or what you were seeing that is how attachment types make themselves not seen supported so they can go into the whole adapting attaching game. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like how, like an example of how I do
Yeah.
that, or
Yeah, just like, yeah, what are you seeing there? Like, how do attachment types make themselves feel not seen and supported so that they can adapt?
yeah. I mean, I think for me, it's just like I always just tell myself that I'm different from the world or something, or like that I like nobody understands me, kind of thing. And
Hmm.
um and for me, it's kind of related to, I think, like how I grew up, and stuff. And so I'm always trying to like maintain this sense of disconnect, I guess, from people, so that they won't see the full me, so that I can always come back with another thing and adapt to that. That makes am I making sense?
I think
Yeah.
Or
so.
You,
Yes.
yeah.
one thing that is occurring to me too here is the trifix thing of, in some sense, being a core nine is somewhat of a blank slate in a certain way. And so your fixes are kind of what you're doing, is sort of like the material that you have to play with, to do some of this attachment and non-attachment and adapting and not being seen and being seen and all of that stuff. There's kind of a, because you're kind of, Xander, you're kind of partly doing your five fix in
Mhm.
this, and
Mhm.
maybe 5 and 3, where there's a certain sort of inscrutable quality of, you're not going to see me, and then, and that brings on, what you've been describing as far as, this adaptation thing and so forth. I mean, my deal is my 7-4 thing of, whatever strange, crazy, exotic, um, stuff, and kind of, you don't know me, and people, just bringing in that whole adaptation dance with all of that.
Well,
Yeah.
what I'll say to that is that, that's a good point, but I do think the core attachment to disconnect is there. It's just that the fixes are going to describe, or they're going to steer in what direction that flavor is going to, how it's going to show up.
Yeah.
Like, so he's saying that I'm going to change it up so that you can never really fully see me. I feel like I can see the angle on that is going to be determined on, or it's going to be shaped by the fixes. So for example, Beth is a 6, and she's had this pattern of, attachment to disconnect. And so always imagining that there is a problem in a relationship, even when there isn't one, so that she can then self-sacrifice her 9 and 2
Mm-hmm.
fixes
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
to
Right.
show that her adaptation is, I'm going to sacrifice in this situation where I don't feel supported, or I've even imagined that I'm not supported.
Hmm.
Like there's a problem here, and I need to martyr myself in order to make it work. And so, for example, um, Beth has kids, and I don't have a problem with. I mean, I don't. Y'all know that I'm not attracted to being a parent, but I love her, and so I don't have a problem with her kids. But she continually imagines that I still have a problem with her kids, and that
Hmm.
that's like a roadblock. And so then she will somehow have to, self-sacrifice, work through this problem that doesn't exist. There is no problem, but this is sort of the disconnect that's replaying itself unconsciously for her, that she's imagining all these problems that aren't problems, so that then she can then self-sacrifice or martyr herself to adapt, because that's what makes her feel like herself. And so I can see how, like what Xander's describing might seem more obvious because he has 5 and 3, but it's just I'm seeing from my perspective different flavors of not being located. So with 7 and 4, it might show up as just like, what's the next wild thing that David's going to get into next? Just like some way for
What?
that to create, that to create that disconnect. It's like, that is how that's going to show up. And so I'm just looking at how each attachment type's doing this, but it's going to look different depending on the fixes.
Yeah, I think the question is making a little bit more sense to me now that I've heard a couple of responses too. And I think, to go back to your question, John, what I actually feel, I think, is loneliness. Is like I am by myself, or I am only me. And just as Beth thinks that there's problems, I always think that I'm alone. And I think that is, influenced by the 5 fix, but I do it in like a five fix way. I reinforce it with a five fix way of like, oh, I am going inside and I'm alone because no one else really sees what I'm seeing here. No one else is really thinking about this in the way that I am. And so then that's I think how I disconnect, or I disconnect from the world, and then I show it again to the world so that they can see what I've been working on or what I've been thinking. And then when they don't, that's when I'm like, see, like, you don't understand me. That's why I'm alone.
Yeah.
So I keep on replaying that loneliness, I guess.
So that's excellent, because there's a couple things you're hitting. One is like, it adds even more clarity to why 4 and 9 are confused all the time. Like, there is this like under the hood of the 9 is this kind of sad boy, sad girl thing. And it's
Sad
different,
soft boy.
and it's just different flavor than 4, which is marked by frustration and whatever. It's like more of an active despair than a
Right.
than the sad thing. But also, like, the loneliness observation is great because tell me if this hits or not, but the loneliness, like, because there's a template for what the attached state feels like that can never actually be realized as an adult through other circumstances. Like, it's kind of a memory of what it's like to be an emerged attached state with the parental figures, like in early infancy. And so, like, nothing is going to constellate that dynamic as an adult. And so part of the individuation process, as I think it was Alexandra maybe talked about before, is like it's a process of enduring and becoming lonely, because rather than having these ghosts of your parents that you're sort of trying to connect with in the present moment, having their ghosts now because they're actually memories from the past that you're trying to reforge the same feeling of relationship with. Instead, as an adult, you don't have those, and you have to like be lonely and individual to meet another individual. This is making sense.
Yeah, definitely.
What about you, Nancy? What have you noticed any pattern of attachment to disconnect? I'm curious to see how that might seem from a 3 perspective.
That's tough. There's been a lot of like things throughout that Xander has brought up that I'm like, oh yeah, and then it sort of like dissipates, and I'm like, oh, there's something there. It's hard to like grasp a thing.
It actually, yeah, it's weird because I'm trying to stay in this conversation and it's really hard to find it.
It's really hard. It's really hard to find it. Yeah, I'm like, oh darn it. It's gone.
I'll point out the experience that I had with sexual 3, and where it was kind of a difficulty in locating how she felt about the relationship. And I guess the fear was that the person that I was seeing or that I was appreciating at the time was I saw something, and for me to say, and she would be like, why are you interested in me? And I'd say, I'm interested in you for these reasons, and it's almost like she would freak out that I had
Mm.
located something about her that I was into, and I think the fear was that what I was locating, that there wasn't anything there, or
Mm.
or that there was a sense that it felt like she was pushing away from the idea that she could be located.
Well, I think for me, I've had that experience, and kind of have that experience with my current partner on and off. It's just, it's that push and pull of if I'm located, there's nothing left.
Mm, that's good.
That's big.
You know,
Yeah.
like there's like that's all I am, and like what's left after that? How do I keep their interest? I don't.
Mm.
And again, it's this paradox thing where you are wanting to be accepted,
Yeah.
located, seen, and so forth. But then when you get it, then you do something to reverse it.
Well, yeah, it's like once you get it, you've reached the end of the book. And then what
Right.
do you do?
And so then that would stop the pattern.
That would
So you've
that
got
would
to make sure to
yeah,
reformulate the pattern. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
that goes with Xander's last sentence of basically, if someone actually soft supported me and I don't have to adapt, then what am I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I am nothing.
Yeah, and I mean, because I'm a pretty direct guy and I have strong reactions to people, so I've had this recurring experience where I'd meet an attachment type and I'd say, I like this and this about you, and then something would happen where they would seem like they need to push away from that, and there was this push pull
Yeah.
thing where they cut it off, and I'm like, okay, so this person's not interested, and then they circle back around to try to make it work again. And I never understood what this pattern was.
Yep.
Is from my point of view, it's so hard to find people that you're interested in out there in the world. So when it does happen, it's like dive in, go for it. And from the attachment point of view, is like, well, I'm seeing this aspect of this person that I appreciate, and I'm letting them know that. And I'm assuming that if they have similar feelings, then we can just dive in. But what ends up happening is they create a problem to
Mhm.
create some kind of separation, but then they act like they need to bridge that gap that they just created.
Mhm.
And so
Yes.
this pattern of disconnect and then adapting to bridge to sort of come back to the connection is what I've noticed with attachment. And I've that Xander's comment really completely opened that up for me. It's like, holy shit, this is the attachment thing, is that there always has to be this sort of way that we're not really on the same page so that they can make it work.
Mhm. Yeah,
Mhm.
Xander's telling them all of our secrets over here.
And one thing that another thing that led me to it is during the early object relations episodes with Courtney, the attachment felt so different because how she was framing the scenario, the childhood scenarios or whatever. For attachment types, it was a question, whereas for frustration and rejection types, it was a statement. So like, oh, for frustrations, you did not meet my needs and you never will, right? That's a statement. And for rejection, it's also a statement. You did not meet my needs and you don't need to because I don't have them. But for attachment, it was a question. It's like, like why do I feel different today? Why are they not meeting my needs? Oh, is it because I'm doing this? Is it because so it's like it's a question. Whereas for the hexa types, it was always statement. And I
Mm.
think that questioning quality is why there's this push pull cycling, never ending thing that the attachment types are doing.
So you're saying the question is accurate to attachment, or it should be a statement for
I think it's
attachment?
accurate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
the question like I keep on replaying the question. And
Mhm.
how
Right.
I always replay the question is to never have an answer.
Yeah.
So you
Good
can't
one.
have an answer in order for
Good
Mhm.
attachment
one.
to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, that's
Mm.
huge.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
And it's like you can see there's so much stuff that's making sense from the point of view of like the way people self-sabotage in relationship and connection
Mhm.
and intimacy, and then the ways people like turn reaching a good relationship or a good dynamic into like just an identity, because it's constant, like what's my love language, this an Enneagram type and all this kind of stuff that people get into to try to get the good attachment. But it's an attachment that has like the ideal feeling of attachment is unreachable.
Yep.
Yeah. I think I experienced that a lot at the beginning of my relationship. I would create problems and then fix them. And I would be like, it would help if we did this. And like this would be helpful. So we should do this. And it's like it took me a while to realize that was kind of just made up.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's interesting. Let's see. Try not to reveal too much about my relationship with attachment type. I think like we both have been playing out. Like we just moved and in together, and that's just brought up a lot of stuff. And it's been illuminating a lot of both of our patterns in relationship. And I'm the perfect boyfriend and man, so it's not really any my fault, but
Right.
but one of the things that has been
Okay.
interesting in terms of the attachment thing is like that Alexandra will like call herself out on is this sort of like, actually this is not really a problem, or there's a lot of like okay, now we got to work on something, or there's something wrong or something's different, and it's like not different, it's like maybe we're just tired tonight. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
and it's funny because as we've gotten to been together longer, that a certain tempo and pattern establishes itself. So we are very passionate with each other, and if there is like a night where we're not feeling passionate, and this is not saying this is actually what happens, but this might be an example. um it'll like signal like, oh, something must be wrong or something's changing, and it's like, no, it's just a circumstance thing, it's not actually a problem. And so that'll activate her attachment seeking. And so part of like what sentence of Xander's, that last sentence of like, if someone actually saw support me and I didn't have to adapt, then what am I? In my book, like I talk at length about like I talk about the difference between being and function, and I think maybe we have not covered that in the podcast. But the main idea in the Enneagram is that that our instincts are functional and our personality is functional. It's based on achieving certain results. It's based on doing something to get something, and that our essence, our being, is just there. And the problem is that we are so caught up with the sparks and bigness and energy and emotion around doing things that we lose the sensitivity and attention on our being. And the result is that we start looking for essence through function. We start looking through essence through doing things around our instincts. And so when we are not present to essence or to our being, we don't have some center of gravity of being developed. This sense of if someone actually saw and supported me and I don't have to adapt, then what am I? It's like, what is being seen, in this case, and who can I be when I'm not having to do an ego project? That on one hand is a kind of liberation, but it's a scary liberation because I'm so used to locating myself as the one who has to do something. And this could be attachment or rejection or frustration. But in terms of attachment, it's like the adapting, the kind of getting there, the kind of working things out or sabotaging that is like how I normally know myself. So this becomes a kind of place where if people are actually looking to have the quality of relationship, that it's like the attachment has a template for the relationship it wants or the relatedness it wants, but it keeps going through it from the point of view of instinct and function. And it has to be some kind of shift into being and to be able to just be with somebody. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's the work that is hard to locate and really hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like boring, I guess you might say.
It is boring.
Well, yeah, because you're thinking you need to, it's that manager thing, you need to do something to get there in a certain way. Whereas it's largely a relaxation of the doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It illuminates that everyone has a different conditions for feeling like a person.
Yes.
in a relationship.
Yeah.
And just if you don't understand what those conditions are for your partner, they're not going to make sense. And for me, getting into a relationship, there's a certain massive hump of rejection that needs to be overcome. It's like once someone can get through the filter of my rejection bullshit, then it's like then we can just build from there. And so the idea of reoccurring problems that need to be fixed or doesn't really compute, because getting there is such a huge obstacle that if you can get to that point, then it's kind of like you're in. But what I see happening with my relationship with an attachment type is that there is an attachment to having certain problems keep coming up again. And for me, it's like once I've dealt with a problem or addressed the problem, it no longer ceases to be a problem. It's like, but that's not if there is a need to always have to be working hard or showing that you're working towards fixing something, then that problem has to keep coming back up again. And so that's what I've been noticing is that what is a relationship for an attachment type when there isn't something to fix, or there isn't some divide between us, even if it's imagined, to overcome. Because for me, it's like, well, here's a problem, let's fix it. And so, well, that's not the point here. The point is, I need to show you that I'm doing something to adapt to this relationship. So yeah, I've been thinking about that. Just how some of these reoccurring things keep popping up as a way to create a separation, so that or problem or something that we should work on. And I think, like John mentioned before, how there's a huge market for like working on relationships. People are always working on relationships, and there are all these different avenues that people are attracted to, how to have the ideal relationship. But what I'm realizing is that what people are attached to as attachment types is in not having the ideal relationship. Like it has to continually, there has to be a problem so that we can work on it, so that I can show you that I'm working on it.
One of the things that does keep the problem, so to speak, that we can be that we need to adapt with going is our lack of integration of the blind spot. Like that is one of the major issues of any relationship, because the blind spot not being integrated creates fucking problems on all kinds of levels for any kind of relationship. If we're talking romantic relationship, especially, where being social blind doesn't make you as accessible and attractive and available to your partner. Being sexual blind, like you could have a perfectly loving relationship that's totally dry and stale and no one wants to change or transform in it. And being self-pres blind can be this like parent-child kind of dynamic that has to occur for the relationship to happen. So one of the key ways that we keep problems going is going into our stacking to try to resolve things or to relate to our partners or whatever dynamics, and dealing with it from our habitual instinctual priority, rather than being present with all three instincts, including that information. Because a lot of times like we might change the relationships that we're in if we listen to all three instincts. We might get to a place that we actually feel we can relax in, and that would threaten the whole process.
So I'm curious about this from Nancy and Xander's point of view, because y'all are I'm assuming, are in relationships with other attachment types. How are you navigating that sort of like it's different attachment types, I'm assuming, but like have you noticed this pattern in your partner, and how is it working out interfacing with your own pattern of attachment?
I can't look at anything specific right now, but I wanted to respond to something that you were saying earlier in terms of there always having to be something to work on in a relationship, like creating problems so I can do something. And I think that relates back to the the object relation of, for the attachment type, that I am the problem.
Mm,
Like
good point. Good point.
yeah, like I have to be the one to like do something so that the parental figure can can um, can meet my needs, right? So
Yeah.
if that's the thing that I'm playing, then I have to keep problems cropping up because ultimately I am the problem here.
Huh.
That's
Yeah,
great.
that is a really great insight. I think
So
there's one like self-help quote, I guess you could call it, that's always really resonated with me. That's just like stuck with me for a long time, which is something along the lines of you always have to assume you're the one or you're the most aware one in the couple. It's like you always have to assume that you're the one who has to kind of
Like
carry
rise to
the
the
team.
occasion.
Yeah, carry the team, solve the problem, kind of thing.
So you mean like you're the one that has to be present first, not necessarily more aware first, right?
Yeah,
That what you s-
exactly. Like
Yeah.
you it's your problem to fix, basically.
that's got to be an attachment point of view, right?
That's probably what it is. Yeah.
Another thing that I encounter a lot with attachment types, I mean, I can count as in everybody, but just thinking specifically from the lens of attachment, like, attachment type being with a partner, it's not always that I'm the problem as the attachment type because a lot of times attachment types will get with partners that don't see them. And it'll be this thing of like my partner can't get on board with me. I think we talked about
Mhm.
that before, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so, but I get what you're saying that there is this sense of me being a problem at the same time. I'm trying to like get clear on what I'm getting at here.
A bit of
Oh,
a martyr kind of
yes.
complex.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's both getting wrapped up in situations where that don't work, but saying that well, attachment is like I'm just going to get into this so I can get the attachment, and hopefully this will become something that works because I'm going to make it work. And so there's a sense of um, wanting a relationship where there's a gap between being seen and supported. This idea that there's it's just not working. It's not really what I want. But if I have this opportunity to adapt to a situation that doesn't work and hopefully make it work, but then it just becomes this never-ending cycle of just trying to make a situation that's not working work.
Well, yeah, and it in that scenario, it is your fault if it doesn't work, right? Then it's you're not
Right.
working hard enough. So
Mhm.
you are in fact the problem while
Yeah.
being the
Yeah.
most awake one.
But I'll see like I've like had some clients and stuff with partners who they're like, there's not a lot going on here, like, and it's like,
Yeah.
but if only they got it
Mm.
together.
Mhm.
And it's
Yeah.
it's more like, well, I think you're choosing them is also you not getting it together. It's not just that your
Yes.
partner don't live up
Right.
to the expectation or something.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, it's a big one. Just in contrast to my own perspective as a rejection type, I'm hex hat boy thinking about it's pretty deterministic in terms of things either fit or they don't fit.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
guess
yeah.
the trap is to see things that are not fitting as fitting and trying to force them to fit. So there's a reality distortion there going on with the hex hat. But with attachment, what I end up seeing from my perspective is this relationship is falling apart in multiple different ways, but attachment types keep bringing up different angles on, well, if we can work on this, then we can make this relationship work. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. I guess you can make that aspect work, but what I'm seeing is this was a relationship that shouldn't exist. Like it shouldn't be. You're trying to revive a corpse. It's not alive,
Mhm.
but you're gonna stick by it and try to resuscitate this thing that's not alive at all. So yeah, that's one thing I see the trap of attachment types. Well, even like in the context of a breakup, where they just, lots of people just stay in these relationships that are practically over for years, working on them, working on different aspects, and maybe they improve slightly, but like the core foundation of the thing isn't there. Like these two people don't really want to be together; they're just making it work, and that's what I see.
Um, to speak as an attachment type, viewing attachment as the best type. Alexandra and I were actually talking about how attachment types have this perseverance
Yes,
that
this is true.
that the other types just don't have, or we
Yeah.
can stick with something
Yep.
for so long, and like, it's just it's a gift and a curse, because usually it's a curse. We stick with things that we shouldn't stick with, and we realize it too late, or it's been too long, and now we've lost years to it. But there's also that, what if we have that kind of wish, that I feel like, that hope that other types don't have sometimes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Just to
wish Al-
reframe it a bit.
No, I
wish
think
Al-
you're right.
yeah.
I mean, I've
Wish
seen
Alexandra was
attachment.
on here because she really resonated with this stuff, and I don't know, like I feel like there's something still I'm not quite like there's something here that I'm not quite. It's like still unsettled for me. I'm sorry I interrupted you, Emeka.
Oh no, that's fine. I was just gonna say that that perseverance that you were mentioning, Nancy, that I've seen, because a lot of times people imagine, oh, an 8 or a 7, like as a badass type. But if you watch people who stick with really difficult things, they tend to be attachment types. Like
Mhm.
just like you think about, why would anyone want to do this extremely difficult thing, like climb Mount Everest or compete in a really difficult sport well into your 40s. Like these are, tend to be attachment types, 9s and 6s and even 3s that
And
can
threes.
really, just really fucking self-sacrifice to get to a certain point. And yeah, I don't. Eights aren't. People sometimes talk about how eights are supposed to be champions for the underdog. I was like, I don't think you realize how fucking self self-contained and selfish eights can be. And not to discount eights who do stand up for the underdog, but I'm talking about a hexat type. There's really no attachment to the goodness of, I don't know, just sticking with a difficult situation as long as the attachment types would.
Yeah, it's kind of like like how does an attachment type use their superpower for the right thing? Like
Right.
that is the beautiful thing about attachment types, is that they can really stick with something and endure and have a lot of inner resolve and strength that hexad types we can look strong on the outside, but there's kind of a brittleness that is on the inside of the hexad types.
Yep.
And that's why we like peace out like I'm frustrated or I reject it so quick.
Yeah.
Fuck off. And so it's a matter of like, how does an attachment type use their enduring powers the right way for good, and for the sake of like genuine love, and not just to play out the attachment to disconnect. Like that's the sort of the inner question. And I think it has to do with, I mean, maybe this is my bias as a heart type, it's something about identity, because I think when attachment types source too much of their self concept externally, they get caught up in trying to make the external see them, basically, but from a place of like from an identification with the not seen identity. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, put it simply, like getting in touch with myself, because both adaptation and disconnect is still related to like the external,
Mm-hmm.
as you're saying. So how do I get in touch with myself despite the external, or like regardless of the external, whether or not they
Yes.
see me or don't see me, in terms of whatever that means?
Right.
How do I see
Right.
myself?
Right. And then using that as a center to choose consciously how I attach. Words are shitty, but like using that capacity to stick with something.
Yeah, and I think the hardest part is figuring out what you should stick with and using that intuition correctly, because I think for triple attachment, a lot of things can feel like intuition that aren't. That's just you kind of getting caught up in your swirling Bermuda bullshit. And you start bullshitting yourself, and then you don't know where the bullshit starts and where it ends. So I view it as kind of, it starts even before like getting in touch with yourself. It's like, finding yourself first. I don't know if that made any sense.
Yeah. Can you say more about what like false intuition? Like things that can feel like intuition that aren't?
Yeah, but I don't really know how or what. What do you want to hear, John? So
Don't adapt to what John wants.
too late. Too late. It already happened. I don't know. There's just a lot of like sensors, I feel like, that I'm constantly putting out. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it almost feels like to me fishing. This is a really dumb analogy, but in
Yeah.
my head, this is
No,
what it
that's
feels
right.
like. Is like I have a bunch of like, have you ever seen one of those big tuna fishing boats where they have a shit ton of lines out
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
they're just waiting for one of them to hit?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a lot of those lines shouldn't, like for me, a lot of those lines shouldn't even be out because they aren't even like attached to anything important.
Yeah, yeah.
But if it hits, I'm going to focus on it. And that's like, oh, that's my intuition. But it's not. It's not really your intuition. It's something else. It's your drive to attach to that person, or it's your 3 taking over and wanting, it's your self-pres 3 telling you that you need to make money this week. So you're going to do this. And that's actually your driving motivation is this new hobby, but you're actually just doing it for money.
So I appreciate how like there was like we could feel you kind of like adapting to me or something or fishing for me. And then when you stopped doing that, it just came really beautifully. Like I don't think your fishing metaphor was bad at all. I think that was like I got that now.
Cool.
Yeah, I think about, just in the context of Enneagram groups and people's responses to Enneagram descriptions, I just keep thinking of like anytime anyone posts a description about sixes and you ask sixes what they think about that description, every fucking six is like, well, it depends, or
Yes, but
yes, but, and like, and not just for six, but I'm seeing how all 3 types, 3, 6, 9, have that aversion to being located in, like, I don't know who said it earlier, but kind of like I haven't located myself, so what the fuck makes you think you can locate me? So that disconnect is even showing up the way people respond to descriptions. Because even for me, I'd be like thinking, yeah, there's the essence of this is true for me, but no one can describe a person. But it seems like that's what attachment types fixate on, is like, no, it's not. It doesn't fit.
yeah. I get the legitimate like heebie-jeebies when someone like tries to put me into a description. I'm like, like I feel like I got like bugs under my skin or something.
When you're like located abruptly, does that like that threatens to evoke loneliness?
I think it threatens to, yeah, I guess loneliness, shallowness maybe would be a little bit better for me.
What do you mean?
Like
Because if you can be defined, then you're
there's
not deep.
nothing left.
Okay.
Right. It's like it's just there's nothing left, and then it's like, ooh.
I'm gonna see it as like if I can see you as an attachment type, then there isn't any angle where you might present yourself as fixing a problem. Like, it's almost like if I can't locate
Right.
where you're at, then there's endless opportunities to make it work. Like,
Yeah.
there's always going to be another angle where you can, all right, let me present this aspect to you to make this relationship work. But if I can sort of see the outlines of where someone is located, which means that their problems are going to be defined to a certain degree, then, and we're identifying what the problems are and we're working on them together, then there's no real avenue for that person to make a display of, well, I'm sacrificing myself to make this work anymore. So that's what I see as the conflict in my relationships with attachment types, is that there is that need to always kind of have, well, you're not quite getting it, so, and I'm going to make it work from that place of, you're not quite getting it, or this situation isn't quite what I want it to be, or there's a problem here, but I'm going to adapt to that. But if I can identify, all right, this is where you're at, it's like, no, here's a new problem, and I'm going to adapt.
And mind you, this is all very subconscious.
Yes.
So,
Totally.
yeah, to those listening who aren't attachment types, don't you go around thinking that all attachment types are over here like, no, ooh, we're gonna move the goalpost just for fun.
Right. Right.
And another piece of this disconnect thing was looking at the foundations of type structure in terms of the centers of intelligence. And the commonality between the three attachment types is that each one is identified with the center that is disconnected from the other two.
Oh
And
yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
And so this creates, I think, for each of them like a duality of experience. Like, I mean, for sixes, it's either I think or I act or live, and that produces like the phobic versus or and counterphobic within all sixes. And I think a similar thing can be said for nines and threes, but in different ways. And so this internal disconnect is projected into my relationship with other people.
So you're saying that the inherent disconnect that each of the attachment type has with their home center is what they're projecting on everyone else.
Right. That's where the I don't even know myself. Like how can you know me
Yeah,
comes from?
that's big.
Do you think that can cause a bit of judgment towards those who feel like they know themselves fully?
From attachment types, you mean? Like,
Yeah, from attachment types.
I don't know.
I mean, I think so. Like, I mean, something Alexander and I talk a lot about is like, you know, when people, I mean, I know it's through a social blind style, but a lot of times, you know, we'll see like attachment types reacting to something I post with like this, how dare you feel so confident in what you're saying or something, or like, how dare you feel so confident in, like your assessment, like it's like the tone or the attitude of confidence or whatever. I don't even think I'm being confident. I just think I'm stating something. And but that will elicit a certain like, you know, I guess it's like a lack of humility gauge or something.
Right. You're a
Well, yeah,
know-it-all.
the reason I ask that is because I experience a good amount of that, and I can't tell if it's if it's three or like attachment or where that comes from. But there's a lot of like if you act like you know, I'm like, I don't like you.
yeah, I mean, it's weird coming from a hexag dominated family where everyone has a strong opinion about everything and it's immediate, you know, like just boom, you know, like you already know how you
Right.
feel
And it's like,
about
how do you
something.
already have that? You haven't even thought about it. You didn't even
Yeah,
give
and
yourself time.
yeah, and that's a thing. I mean, from like an A perspective, from there's a lot of speed with how quickly I can assess something in my body. So it feels like for me, looking at everybody else is like, what's taking you so long? What is taking you so long in realizing what needs to happen next? And so when I see indecision from attachment types, I start projecting all kinds of things on people, like they already know and they're hiding it. Because for me, it's like I knew like 5 hours ago, you know, what needed to happen, and or just people taking so long to make decisions. And so I started imagining that people are, you know, doing all kinds of crazy shit because I can't imagine why it would take someone so long to find their location on anything.
My mom is a hexad in a family of attachments, and I see that frustration play out in her a lot. Like a lot on a daily basis. If we're all hanging out together, she's like the one, like you can see it in her body. She gets almost like jittery, like, oh my God, hurry up.
Yeah.
Just even just talking to her. And it's like, I cannot hurry up.
You know, I mean, there's always a like, don't get it twisted. Like, heck, we still have to process, and hexatypes still have to figure things out. But I guess what it comes down to is that hexatypes are not afraid to start off with the location. Like, this is where I'm at.
Yeah, that's a great distinction.
I'll
start out here. This is where I'm at, and I could change my mind 5 minutes from now, but I'm not. I'm gonna put my foot in the ground. And it seems like the attachment thing is, you know, I don't even know where I'm at, and you know, let's just make it work as we go along.
Also, I think it's a thing with attachment types is that the answer or the thing they come forth with needs to be well-rounded. It needs to have
yeah.
considered everything,
Yeah, because
or-
if it
or be
hasn't,
inclusive or something.
right. If it hasn't, I feel like it's almost like we haven't done our due diligence.
Well,
Yeah.
and it seems like it's got some of flavors or elements of that, like attachment assumption of needing to get on this. We're trying to get on the same page with each other.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it
Mhm.
is.
You
You're
know,
right.
there's like, because like Hexad opinion, generally speaking, does not consider that at all.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
Yeah.
why would be this? This is where's my location. And so,
Why do
like,
we have to have the same location?
Right.
yeah, and so like for interacting with an attachment type, you can feel that there's just trying to find the common ground or the agreement or the whatever, and searching for it and kind of extending that invitation in you. And so of course their location is not clear immediately because they're
Yeah.
negotiating it or navigating it in real time.
Right. In a
Mhm.
good negotiation, you don't start out with an answer. You work towards one together. Was that the most self-pres 3 thing that I could possibly say in that moment?
Yeah, I guess I'm just realizing how it's most conducive to getting on the same page or negotiating a location if you start from the assumption that I'm not being seen, I'm not being supported, or there's a disconnect here. So
Yeah.
if you started with the location, like then it's a lot harder to negotiate together what that location is. So I those two things go hand in hand.
Mhm.
Yeah, because what I will encounter, at least with nines, is like I have a pretty quick assessment of my feelings, not just in the moment, but also how I've historically responded to different things, and to a point where it gets me in trouble because I overly dismiss things too fast.
Yeah.
But I'll see attachment types, especially nines. It's kind of like a circumstance. It's very similar to a circumstance that they reacted to in the past comes up, and it's almost like it's a new thing totally. I'm like, but you hated this, like when this happened last
But
time.
maybe not this
Ye-
time.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think I told a story about Beth having two horrendous haircuts. She had a haircut by this lady once before, and it was horrible. It was like you go and saying, I want you to cut the sides down a little bit, and then you leave it the mohawk. That's how bad it was.
Oh god.
And like just like the person didn't even listen to what you said. And so she's been telling me about this lady and how horrible the haircut was. And then she said she's getting her haircut again, and she was going to go back to this lady. And I was like, why are you going back to this lady? And she's like, well, I mean, I only need her to do like just a little bit. I just need her to take off just a little bit from the sides. Like, how can she fuck it up? And I was like, all right. But I was thinking in the back of my mind, there's going to be a problem. I mean, they're like, it's not just like this person sucks at cutting hair. This person did not listen to anything you said whatsoever. So obviously something's wrong. And if lo and behold, of course, she went, got the haircut, and it was a disaster because this woman like chopped off. She just wanted a little bit of hair off, and this woman just chopped off like more than half of her hair and was super short. And it was like she was like, "Oh, but it was." She kept saying that it wasn't a disaster because I was like, "This is a fucking disaster because you went in wanting this little bit of hair off, and she chopped off like half of your hair." Uh, but later she started, got really upset about it when it started to really set in. Like, oh fuck, my look at my hair. And I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, just watching the whole thing of how, I think a Hexat type would probably have this experience once and be like, fuck that hairstylist. I'm never fucking going back to that hairstylist again. And, she needed a haircut again, and she went back to the same person who absolutely butchered her hair the first time. And I was like, what is this? Like, this is like attachment to this problem, and to try to make that problem work. It's like this is a reoccurring thing in her life. And maybe at some point she'll be on to talk about this. All these different ways that she keeps going back to the problem and then trying to make it work because that's the pattern.
I'm laughing because I'm thinking of you guys, John and Emiko. having to tell me several times about certain people. And me going back to the same person, thinking a different thing's going to happen this time.
I'm glad I finally understand why that's happening. Like,
Love you,
it was
David.
an issue 6 months ago. 6 months ago when we talked about it last time. It's like, here we are again, the same fucking person having the same fucking conversation.
Yeah. And I say, but I had a conversation with her about it. And then I say, hey, I'll do the same conversation again.
Yeah.
And it'll make it better.
So it's like, yeah, I've been watching this play out, and it just, I don't have any attachment types in my family, so this is my first up close experience of attachment types, and just seeing like there's a way that there's an attachment to recreating certain problems, and almost like an amnesia about that problem.
Yeah.
That's part of it, because I mean, when I experience a problem, I don't have I have the opposite of
No,
amnesia.
you're the opposite. Yeah, totally.
So that problem gets like tattooed in my psyche, and I'm like, never
again.
So it's a huge contrast, because I wouldn't go anywhere near anything that looked like a problem that, if it hurt bad enough the first time, but I'm seeing there's a way that's like, well, this time I'm going to make it work. This time, if I do this, it's going to be different this time. And I'm like, well, maybe you shouldn't go back there at all.
Yeah. So
It's that toxic hope. Just keep hoping that maybe this time it'll be different.
The audacity
of hope.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this then kind of returns to what I said earlier about attachment types needing to find where to focus their superpowers of endurance. And that requires getting very clear on what the ego thinks is a potential for connection or attachment. Like what are the things that occur that I see in somebody else that gets this whole attachment game going? And so that as I start to make those kinds of distinctions that help me individuate from trying to go back into the waters of attachment over and over again, and try to like navigate that and make it work, and those kinds of things. It's like, how do I see what I as an attachment type have a proclivity to start, like, quote unquote, working toward, right?
Yeah. I think part of that for me is part of what was brought up in the group chat a couple days ago about how you kind of have to feel like the full range of emotions, which I feel like attachment types don't do very well. Like, you kind of have to allow yourself to like feel the disgust about the fucked up haircut, or or the terrible job you're in, or like really get mad about things and really feel it and kind of overreact. Like, you kind of have to overreact so that that, okay, that's like really there.
That's great. Yeah, because like what's interesting is, like, I learn a lot from all this like 4 verse 9 bullshit that I get into, and like because it's such a contrast, yet a lot of the same terms can describe both types. And so, one of the things I consistently see is this, like, we joke about the hashtag all the feels thing, and how 9s have a much wider range of feelings than 4s, but they also like are so prone to be overwhelmed by their own feelings, because it's sort of like it all hits them at once or something like this, and it becomes this, I'm too much, all these kind of things. And so, yeah, you're right that there is, even though there may be a sense or feeling that I as an attachment type feel a lot or even feel too much, at the same time, there's still a kind of keeping feelings at bay, or delayed reactions, or feeling in small digestible increments.
Well, even in that statement, I'm feeling too much, it means you're putting a good or bad label on it, so you're kind of policing yourself.
Exactly.
Like, me feeling too much doesn't mean I've shown too much, just means I'm feeling too much.
Right. And it's kind of that Xander's mentioning the the division of centers, the compartmentalization of the dominant center from the other two centers.
Mhm.
So there is a way that I, as attachment type, and I 9 most clearly, but as an attachment type, I'm not all on the same page inside. So like I'm not allowing all the inputs to hit me at once. So it's hard to get a clear reading on whatever circumstance I'm reacting to. Because for example, I go and get a bad haircut somewhere, and instead of having all my centers go, I didn't like that, and having the emotional impression of like she didn't listen to me, the hairstylist didn't listen to me, and the body sense of like no. Maybe like my emotions didn't like it, but my mind can talk myself into, well, maybe it was I just didn't give her the chance, or maybe my instructions to what I wanted were not clear. Maybe she didn't know the shape of my head well enough to do it, whatever. It's like I always see attachment types like one center hears the impression or the emotion or the advice and goes, yeah, that's right. And then another center talks the other two centers out of it.
Yeah, that's 100% what it is. Yeah.
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 Like, for example, back to the Beth's bad haircut example, I could tell she was upset. I mean, really upset.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a way where what was coming out of her mouth did not match what the other centers were saying. And I felt like I had to embody the outrage and
Yes. Yeah.
the disgust that was there but wasn't being expressed. And so there's a way that all the 3 centers are at war with each other, in terms of what is going on with the situation. How do I feel about a situation? How am I responding to it? And that's where all this contradictory shit comes up, where one aspect of attachment type is going towards a fucked up situation, and the other aspect is saying that, well, we can make the situation work, and maybe the next week they'll switch up. And that inability to locate themselves, or it creates this storm where you can't really find where they're at. It's like, well, was she really upset about that haircut? I know she is, but she's saying different things about, she's actually, it's not her fault. It's really difficult to do this kind of hair and all this kind of stuff. But then she's not really dealing with the emotional weight of, I got another fucked up haircut from the same person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really important to me to, this is abstract, but the idea that the attachment types and the triangle on the symbol, it's cycling through, it's circling, it's not static. So that's that confusion of the centers or whatever, or one center convincing the other, or 2 against 1 or whatever. And it's Nancy's fishing thing. It's, you know what I mean? It's adapting and not adapting, and not being seen and not being seen. It's all circling.
Right.
So, Czander, is there anything else you wanted to say about not just attachment, but any of the other ones, or just anything you wanted to add before we get off here?
Well, I mean, when John was saying, "Oh, I feel too overwhelmed," I feel like I get into that constantly. But it's interesting because to even be able to say that means I'm already a distance from my emotion. Like,
yeah.
oh, I feel overwhelmed means my emotions, what is going to overwhelm me is like over there. Like, I don't want you to overwhelm me, so I'm going to put you over there.
You're already disconnected if you're able
Right.
to.
Right.
Yeah.
Rather than just letting myself like feel those emotions. And so I think that is where I think the disconnect, the attachment to disconnect comes from. Like, I'm attached to disconnecting from myself. And so therefore, like, I'm going to project that out into other people as well. I'm like, you have to disconnect
Ooh,
from
yeah,
me
there it
also.
is.
Yeah.
Can you just say that again? That was really good. Just say that.
Yeah,
last sentence
because of how my type is structured in terms of the centers. Like, I'm attached to being disconnected from myself.
again.
Therefore, I want you to be disconnected from me too, so that I
Damn.
can do that work.
Calling himself out.
Jesus
Yes.
Christ, man.
Nice. Off of that, Xander, one of the things that Alexander reports then is when she gets more in touch with herself, all these different kinds of emotions and impressions and stuff come up that are not as familiar to her because she spent a lot of time disconnected from herself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so then she thinks something might additionally be wrong because it's like, whoa, this is not familiar.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I think that attachment types need to give themselves a lot of room and permission and patience and curiosity about what comes up around, like that something unfamiliar or seemingly overwhelming is not bad.
Yeah. Yeah. A conversation with Beth, because I mean, all y'all know that Beth was the person who had that exorcism breathwork session in New Orleans. Xander, you didn't know, but
What?
now
Well,
you know.
well, I was gonna actually say, I mean, you can tell me the story. Is like the places where I've most potently felt in touch with not in touch, but like in touch with myself is under psychedelics.
Yeah.
Like I'm forced to. Like I have no choice. I
Yeah.
have no choice, and it's terrifying. Yeah.
So what I was going to say is that the trigger for that breathwork session was um, me and Beth getting together, and she describes it that she didn't have a choice but to be present with me, and then
Yeah.
being present with me
Yes.
meant that all this stuff that she was disconnected from and that she's been pushing away from in terms of not feeling things were all come rushing to the surface, and so which manifested itself in the form of these intense panic attacks that we had to do a breathwork session for. So yeah, this is a huge insight. Just this disconnected from yourself, which means you also have to maintain a disconnection from other people, and then you have these experiences like psychedelics or a soul connection into chemistry where you have to be present and you have to be connected to yourself. You can't run away,
Mhm.
and that's what created this huge wave or this intense transformative encounter with herself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But anyway, yeah, this was great.
This is
Yeah.
fucking good.
Yeah, thank you
for
so
having me
much,
on.
Xander.
Yeah,
that
thank
was
you.
you're awesome.
Oh, thanks. Y'all are great too.
Yeah, this was great. I'm going to be thinking about this. I think a lot of attachment types will benefit because
Mhm.
I remember early on in the year, just a bunch of people have been typed as attachment types, trying to figure out what it means to be an attachment type, and we've all been trying to figure that out as well. And so,
It means hell.
so this insight, I think, is a huge piece of this puzzle. Probably the biggest one so far. Like, I can see it. I can see this pattern of
Yeah.
disconnect. So thank you.
Yeah, it's really clarified a lot. And it's cool because, I do think that on this level of understanding requires a lot of capacity to see oneself and to be real with oneself. And, I think one of the big themes of this podcast is that there is a desert of original insights and ideas out there on the Enneagram. And so to have something not just like you've brought and that Courtney has brought is just like amazing. Yeah, let's shout out our
Spot-
queen Courtney too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Courtney's awesome.
I'm sure she'll have some thoughts on this because I think this is a
Yeah.
pretty big nugget. But yeah, hopefully we can have more discussions about this as we all think about it, because I don't think we've even scratched the surface on how all this this disconnect shows up. So maybe we might do another one on this.
Mhm.
Mhm.
All right.
Dope.
All right.
All right,
Thanks, Xander.
Thanks,
Yeah,
everyone.
thank you, Xander.
See you guys later.
Bye.
Peace.
Bye.
Later. Bye.